This week in games, Microsoft lays off 9,000 employees. Phil Spencer might be leaving soon. And let's talk about this Stop Killing Games initiative. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 258. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Yeah, that's me, the co-host. Some might say the best. Would you say that, Tav?
I would say that you show up most weeks and you put in a good job, Connor.
Show up most weeks.
You know?
Most weeks. Almost every week.
Almost every... Well, that would be most now, wouldn't it?
It's underselling it. That makes it seem
there
like I skip out every...
I don't know what to tell you, Connor. That's what the truth of the matter is.
And not a strong enough word, basically.
Oh.
Most.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Two Penny Gamescast. Each week, me and Connor come to you with the nerdy news you need to know concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with two topics, two pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below to put in your own 2 pennies and your own 2 cents in the comments down below, and we'll read them on next week's episode and respond to them as such. We, of course, come to you live every Monday afternoon, twitch.tv/2pennygames, and we're also streaming on TikTok, but that's more for discoverability. We would rather you jump on over to Twitch, follow us on Twitch, and watch us there. But however you watch us is perfectly fine. You can also catch if you miss the live stream, you can catch all of our shows, or at least this show, Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Connor, how's your week been?
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
I mentioned we had recorded not that long ago the Piggy Bank, our other show, our Saturday show. Played Demon Souls.
Look at you.
Beat Demon Souls.
Look at you. Wow. He's already done it. You know, a week into June. You might want to take some notes.
July.
Oh, July. You're right. You might want to take some notes on your opinions so that you remember them a month from now.
That's probably a smart idea.
Yeah. Be careful whenever you move away from the mic. You're not getting picked up.
I know. I did it. I was like,
yeah. Fantastic. That's great to hear. Great to hear. Connor, of course, every week we come with the nerdy news the people need to know concerning the video game industry. We each bring 2 topics, 2 pennies, if you will. But I want to jump to some audience 2 pennies and get their 2 cents in as well. I'm going to jump from our newly posted heated Kingdom Hearts debate short. Mr. Taco 21 asks, is this based on gameplay, plot, replayability, or all of the above? Kingdom Hearts has a very head-scratching plot and a very repetitive gameplay, but if you ever played Kingdom Hearts 2, it kind of makes to want to replay KH1. At the end of the day, it's very subjective, and I think a lot of older games just shots people with a nostalgia beam. I like KH and Fable pretty equally nostalgia-wise. Of course,
it is definitely all the things above.
It is all of the above, and we go even beyond that. It's not just gameplay, plot, replayability, all that. We also talk about influence, what that game contributed to the story of video games as a whole, and then of course, favorability, good moments, bad moments, all of that. Game feel is a big one for me. And of course, this is our 2 Penny Game Club, which is our monthly video game book club. Connor just described he just beat Demon Souls, which is going to be our next episode at the beginning of next month, in which we play games in the background, review them at the beginning of each new month, and then rank them amongst the other games in the series. So we've done, obviously, Kingdom Hearts 1, like the video that you just saw. We most recently did Castle Crashers. We've done Portal 1 and 2. We've done a couple of Resident Evils. We've done Last of Us, Final Fantasy 7, Banjo-Kazooie, Mario 64. We've run the gambit on a bunch of different games, so make sure you go check that out. There's a full playlist with every episode in it on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@2pennygames. So make sure you check all that out. It's probably it's definitely my favorite show that we do, and it's probably the best show that we do because it's very, very much re-listenable too.
And we actually talk about a video game rather than boring old news.
Yeah, the boring old news that so doesn't matter like this week.
It's a big one this week.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, tune in about 2 months from now when most likely Kingdom Hearts 2 will be played if things align certain ways.
We'll see. No, because we're not doing Kingdom Hearts 2 next. We're doing whatever the one in between, Chain of Memories or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, we are?
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Why?
One of them. Is that the next one? Why? Because that's the rules of the show, is that we created on the fly, is that we do them as they come.
Guess so.
So
then maybe he won't choose that one.
So that we can see progression. I don't think he's choosing that one. Coop Hawk, which I've seen your comments before. Thank you for commenting repeatedly, Coop. On the big 6 games of the year so far, where we discuss the potential 6 Game of the Year nominees at the Game Awards, says, I don't think DS2, Death Stranding 2, would be in consideration if it wasn't a PlayStation exclusive Kojima game. This happens in sports all the time as well. A big name player from a very popular team will get more praise come award season than they should. I have a lot of respect for Kojima because he makes what he wants and doesn't pander, but that shouldn't make people completely blind to the flaws of his games. The massive one is always dialogue. For story-heavy games, his dialogue is, at least in the English translation, just a horrible B-movie stuff. Well, I don't agree with the B-movie or horrible. He definitely drones on and on and on and on. He's got a lot of exposition in his games. And generally, I kind of agree with you. Not on the Death Stranding 2 not deserving of a spot, but I do agree that, like, Death Stranding in general gets more notoriety, it gets more attention, it gets more conversation about it because it's a Kojima game, because it's a PlayStation exclusive, because there is so much focus on what a Hideo Kojima game is. Death Stranding 1 didn't win Game of the Year, and it wasn't, like, widely received as, like, the best game that year at all. This game is and has been, and I think deserves it because it really is that good. Now, it's still got problems, and I think for the most part, people acknowledge those problems and you know, bring them up when they should appropriately. But, I mean, the game's great. Like, it may not be for you, which is a whole other thing entirely, but the game is fantastic. I'm 50 hours deep, and those 50 hours flew by.
You know, kind of agree with him on this. Not as hardline as he maybe makes it out to be. When you go back to the first Death Stranding, yeah, it wasn't the most well-received crazy thing in the world, but it was also nominated for Game of the Year that year. It had no chance of winning, but there were other games that would have deserved it, and I see that as no other reason being on the nominee list in 2019 other than the fact it was a Kojima game. I think if it was someone else making it, even if it would have gotten the praise it did, where it did, you would have had no one really, you know, urging for that to be on the list.
And I mean, as much as we want to talk about how, quote unquote, objective it should be, these award shows are always popularity contests. Like, maybe not to, like, get the win. The win is not always about being popular, but being nominated is about being popular. If you're a popular game that a lot of people played, you're probably going to get nominated. Like, that's just kind of how these things roll. And I think kind of rightfully so. I mean, the best game of every year is one that nobody's played that got buried alive on Steam.
I think the bad argument for that as a why you put games on like the Game of the Year list is Overwatch, a game that had a great big fall from grace, and it was the popular game at the time, and it won Game of the Year in 2016. I think if everybody would objectively say it didn't deserve it, especially now, when you even could have made that argument then, which is all just to say that I still like push back against.
I mean, especially now, like, that's not fair. You can't gauge what Overwatch is today based off of what it was in 2016. Overwatch was massively popular, had a huge impact, defined the hero shooter, like,
and then it got bad.
But that doesn't matter for what it was in 2016.
I mean, it kind of does when you still have the game offered today, and it's still playable.
No, how does? Yeah. Hold on. How does what happens to a game 7 years later after it comes out and after it wins all its awards? How does that retroactively take away its value of what it was in the time?
Because that value only exists to people that existed in that specific time. Everybody else will not think the same way. This is the caveat of having an online game where it's not static. There are a lot of online games that aren't static, especially one with how they rolled out Overwatch.
Connor,
adding
that's
it on
so
to
irrelevant to the conversation that we're having. We're talking about award shows. We're talking about award seasons.
Well, exactly, which is why I'm saying the idea of just popularity shouldn't be as held up as you say it is. Because at the end of the day, this is not like it's a group of people that are deciding it, and they could just say, "Well, we're going to do the games that are better."
But I'm not saying popularity wins you the award. I'm saying popularity gets you on the list.
And that's my issue, where there's definitely games that are better than something like Death Stranding, but it's smaller. So if, in terms of gaming, why put a game that everyone already knows there that's not going to win, as opposed to a game that would have been reviewed better, but also doesn't have that same notoriety?
Okay, objectively, yes, you are correct. That's the correct take to have. Yeah, right? Like we should go for the best game that came out, and it's not always the most popular one. That's just kind of how that works. But if nobody played it, how would people know to nominate it?
If nobody played it, how would nobody know to nominate it? The people who decide.
If you have not played every single game that came out in the year, which is impossible to do because there's games coming out every day, it's just not you gotta prioritize the ones that get the conversation.
And this kind of goes to connect it to the Oscars. The whole big hubbubaloo last year was that a lot of the people who were voting on those categories didn't play or didn't watch all the movies. Now, again, video games, there's so many of them, and there's so many in differing level of qualities that you can narrow it down, I think, a lot more. But with that, if you're voting on what's going to be nominated for a thing, maybe play games that are considered good before putting one that's just there because it's popular.
That's what the purpose of nominating things are. So here's a list. Jurors go play this list of games.
Yeah. So why not go games that are just have a higher chance just based on the game itself, not the popularity of it at the time, or just popularity in general? Well, I'm mainly hinging on
because games like Inscription, I believe Inscription was one of the best games of the year in the year that it came out. But games like Inscription didn't get the notoriety of games like, I don't remember what year that was, Ratchet and Clank. So yeah, of course, Ratchet and Clank is going to draw more eyes, more people are going to vote for it, nominate it, all of that. Even though Inscription is probably the better game, if a substantial less amount of people played it, it doesn't matter. I also want to return to this online multiplayer game take that you have. Oh, listen, Overwatch was not my pick for game of the year in 2016. I think it's weird for an online-only, multiplayer-only game to get game of the year personally. That's me. But I don't make the rules. And I don't understand how, just because Overwatch fell off 7 years later, how does that suddenly make it bad that it won in 2016? That doesn't compute in my brain.
It feeds into the fact that it won because of the popularity contest. That's one of the only cases where
it was also a great game.
Won. It was, and now it's no longer a great game.
So it was a great game when it came out. And that's
maybe other games would have deserved it more though in 2016. Because again,
Connor, here's how this works. Connor, is in 2016, Overwatch was one of the best games of the year, so it deserved to be nominated, and it happened to win. That's how that works. Now, here's something that you're going to disagree with me on because the way you have it in your head is not fair to games. Online multiplayer games should be allowed to get nominated multiple years. If they put on a stellar year later on down the line, they deserve to be nominated and potentially even win Game of the Year. But nobody ever does that.
Like, when games release, do we decide if it's that year? I get your point.
Because in 2016, like it or not, Overwatch is a valid pick for Game of the Year. In 2025, no, God no, absolutely not. But in 2016, it is. Now, when did Destiny Last Light, or not Last Light, the Final Shape come out? Last year? Year before? Yeah, last year, right?
Yeah.
Final Shape was last year. Final Shape should have allowed Destiny 2 to become nominated for Game of the Year because it was one of the best gaming experiences you could have. It had a moment. It was big. But because it was Destiny 2 and it had already had its moment, nobody nominated it. That's not fair. That's not fair. And that would create, if everybody was cool with that, then your idea of, the game fell off being a detraction for it would make sense. But bashing 2016 Overwatch because what they did in 2020, That doesn't make sense, Connor. That's illogical.
I get what you're saying. I'm hinging more on the popularity aspect, which, let's be honest, that's the reason.
Connor, that still
you
doesn't...
could say it's a great
Connor,
game. You could
that
say it's one of
still
the best
doesn't make
games.
sense because in 2016,
That kind of game,
Overwatch was overly popular and it was great. It was still one of the best games ever. If instead of if Blizzard hadn't fucked it up with Overwatch 2 and everything that they did with that, if instead the fan base just died out, would you still have this same take? The game still fell off. The game still's not doing what it is. If it had an empty servers, you still can't play it today. It's the same thing.
Difference with that is there's a difference between players stopping playing a game versus a game getting worse, like Halo 3.
Also, Overwatch 2, it's called Overwatch 2. It's different, but it's a different game.
It's just Overwatch. But
I understand. I understand they framed it just like an update because they wanted everybody to come over, but it's a different game.
And it basically just was an update, wasn't it? Like they didn't do anything else.
It was an update, yes. Then they just turned it into Overwatch 2, yes. But my point being, like you're judging Overwatch today against what Overwatch was, and that's not fair. It's a I hate to do this to you because you're my best friend and I love you. That's a bonehead argument. That's a brain dead argument. That's the level of argument I would expect in TikTok comments.
It makes more sense. Again, I'm hinging more on the popularity aspect than the game it eventually became because I know how these people
popular
work.
in 2016.
But I'm talking about why it won is because of the popularity less than the game itself. Knowing how this jury, whoever really decides it, operate.
So?
Yeah, so I'm saying popularity is a stupid reason to put it in.
No, but again, I come to you. You can't play every video game that comes out. It's just not possible. And you can bring up the Oscars all you want. Movies are 2 to 3 hours long. Video games, upwards of 100 sometimes. It's just impossible to play every video game. That's why we limit it down to what was the culture talking about this year, what moved the culture this year, and popularity is an important slider in that to get things on the board.
These things make sense if you're just not one of the people who's on the board deciding what gets voted. When you can kind of have a more like, okay, what games are we going to choose to play that we haven't played already that are reviewed well, that are well regarded, rather than just defaulting saying, well, Death Stranding, even though that definitively wasn't as popular as even some other games that still had a lot of popularity, but it's Kojima, we'll put it there.
What in your brain is in this thing? Because the only thing that I can think of is Fire Emblem Three Houses. Spoilers: Fire Emblem Three Houses wasn't popular enough.
Wasn't popular? I mean, I'm not. Again, that's why I'm pushing back against the popular idea.
No, and I understand. I understand the value of that, like or the integrity that you're showing with that. But
yeah,
Fire Emblem Three Houses is 100 hours. Death Stranding is 30, and made by gaming's biggest auteur. More people are going to play that and consume it and get through it and be able to judge it. Like, that's just how this goes.
Well, now we're talking about sales rather than, Game Length was the best argument they had there. But again, these are people who are in the gaming sphere. You're not going to play one of the bigger games that year. Like a Jeff Keighley kind of
one of the niche genres in gaming, one that isn't as widely pop. Like I understand not liking the idea of popularity being an important factor, but it is an important factor.
In terms of that, niche genre is far more fitting for Death Stranding than a tactical game, and I think there's more of a general audience that would enjoy Fire Emblem Three Houses rather than enjoy Death Stranding.
Death Stranding's a third-person action shooter. Like, what are you talking about?
Oh, Tav, now it's not just a Strand game. Now it's an action adventure.
Well,
shooter.
Yes,
it's not really an action.
like we like to talk about the Strand type game, but it's a 3D action adventure game. What do you want?
But you're not mainly fighting. You're mainly walking.
So it's still a 3D action adventure game,
but not in the same. Not when you say that, and people think, "Oh, Gears of War, Uncharted, not Death Stranding." That's where the popularity aspect is like, well, most people aren't going to find that.
Well, that's the beauty of the fucking art form, Connor, is that we can experiment and have a wide variety of things.
Sure, great, but that doesn't deserve to be in the spot of Game of the Year just because it's a Kojima game.
Says you.
Says Keighley. Well, no, it doesn't.
Listen, yeah. I've played a lot of Death Stranding. 2019 was not the strongest year. I don't think it's a stretch to say Death Stranding deserved a gaming nom.
Gaming nom, sure, but best game that year. Most popular.
It didn't win. What are you mad about?
That's my problem. Is again, that's my problem where they put something on that pedestal just because of its popularity when it's far more beneficial both for the culture and for what you just said for gaming as an art.
But
style,
you're only saying this because you and your brain have an anti-weird agenda that's popped up in like the last 3 months. I don't know where this came from, but you have this weird thing.
Agenda?
No, an anti-Death Stranding agenda where you're like, it's just walking. You haven't played the fucking video game.
But I know that the reception of it wasn't as great even as what you would consider it. Like
it was like an 80. It was like an 84, 83
in the 70s.
No, it was a low 80s. It was like
low 80s. Okay.
Yeah, it was like in like an 82 to 84 range. I don't remember the number exactly.
Yeah.
It was one of the and really it's only there just because it was a wide breadth. It's not like a bunch of the reviews were in the 6s and 7s. It got a bunch of 10s. And it got a bunch of 6s and 5s.
Yeah.
Which there's always the argument that good art is divisive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's not good art. I'm debating the Game of the Year awards, not like my own objective feelings on a game.
One of gaming's greatest auteurs coming with his first new IP in 30 years. And it's a PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah, which always gets lots of push from PlayStation. I mean, you're kind of highlighting reasons why you shouldn't put a game that's already going to be successful in the ways you're describing.
And Connor, it was one of the best games of the year. I don't know what to tell you. The popularity thing works when the game is also good. The game also has to be good. Star Wars Outlaws was one of the most popular games of last year, but the game fucking sucked. So guess what? It didn't get a fucking Game of the Year nomination. That's how that works.
Notice how
Genshin Impact is one of the most popular games of all time. It didn't get nominated for Game of the Year.
You're dancing around Hogwarts Legacy here, Tavin.
Hogwarts Legacy didn't get nominated for Game of the Year.
Yeah, I still, the people who make these decisions definitely aren't in the same space as you are.
Sliders. It's not one factor rules them all.
You're making all good points, Tavin. My issue is more with, again, I keep going back to the game because this is, of course, what the comment we're responding to is. I think you put more thought into how these things are decided more than they do.
Maybe, but that ideally it would be like. I also know that when Keeley emails all the jurors, he lists a bunch of games that came out and were big and had impact. Like he gives them a list of things, and then also says, but also nominate whatever you feel was important.
Yeah, and then when you add that part to it, I can't help but think they're like, what game did I
don't understand. Like Balacho got nominated last year. Blue Prince is probably going to get nominated this year.
Maybe.
There's
exceptions to that.
They do the best. I feel they do the best they can. I don't think when you put on award shows of this magnitude, there's no way to make everybody happy.
True.
And you can sit here and point fingers at XYZ games all you want, but there's reasons why they don't get nominated. Invalid reasons. It's not just because, it just wasn't popular. No, it's because it wasn't popular, and it's probably a niche genre, and maybe it wasn't as good as you think it is.
Basically, that's what we do already. We trust whoever's deciding it that they know what they're talking about.
Right. What's up? There's not really a better way to do it, considering the factors here. Keeley goes to all the major outlets of the people who play a lot of video games. A lot of these outlets have big staffs so that they can diversify their takes.
How many people do actually decide on these things?
A lot of people. It's a lot of people.
Yeah, just like how a lot of people vote in a democracy, does it really mean that they're in control? Things to think about, Tavin.
I mean, he puts the jurors list up every year. You can just go and look at it yourself. I mean, you can wag your finger and blame. Keeley doesn't do any of the nominating. Keeley doesn't have a vote. So Connor, the whole it's Jeff Keeley thing falls flat when you bring in Death Stranding, because
just like how
Keeley didn't do it.
Just like how a president isn't the one to send us to war, yet they always seem to.
It's literally not how that works.
These are all
literally not how that works.
This is the problem, Tavin. You just trust them too much. Them.
All right. Well,
It was them?
all right. You're no longer having fun. You're no longer having a fun conversation. Now you're just being a troll. So we're gonna move
Well,
on.
I mean, the conversation was kind of over.
Well, no, you just ran out of things. You ran out of valid points, and I outwitted you because I'm better at this than you. But you want to open up the podcast as if you're the greatest.
Tavin, we have talked for like 20 minutes on a comment. How long?
It's been close to 20 minutes, around 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's the beauty of the show and why you should drop a comment down below so that we can have these conversations and we can get the people's 2 cents in. It's important to get the people's 2 cents in, Connor.
It is. Now that we're actually getting them. Before it was like,
sometimes it was rough.
Don't got nothing.
Sometimes it was rough. Moving on to topic number 1. Connor, this is going to be my first topic of the day, my first penny of the day. Microsoft
fun reading.
Set to lay off 9,000 employees. Gaming division takes major hit. This is, of course, written by our very own Connor Elliott over at TwoPennyGamesNews.substack.com. Link in the description down below to go read the article yourself. Microsoft announced Wednesday. What?
No snide remark. I didn't hear it. I should do this more. Write stories.
Write stories? Yeah, you should do it more.
Yeah.
I mean, you only wrote 3 and you should have wrote 4, but it is what it is.
Well, because
you should also you are currently unemployed. You should be writing more. You should be editing too. What's going on with that?
Editing. You sit down and you play around with.
I'll be honest. Maybe you should have put Demon Souls down a little bit.
I can't
maybe
say yes to
maybe
that
you should have done something a little productive. A little productive.
I
Microsoft
did,
announced Wednesday it will cut 4% of its workforce in a massive round of layoffs, resulting in multiple canceled projects and the closure of Romero Games and in-house studio The Initiative. An email from CEO of Microsoft Gaming, Phil Spencer, leaked to Windows Central, reads as follows. Quote, "Today, we are sharing decisions that will impact colleagues across our organization to position gaming for enduring success and allows us to focus on strategic growth areas. We will end or decrease work in certain areas of the business and follow Microsoft's lead in removing layers of management to increase agility and effectiveness. Out of respect for those impacted today, the specifics of today's notifications and any organizational shifts will be shared by your team leaders in the coming days. I recognize that these changes come at a time when we have more players, games, and gaming hours than ever before. Our platform, hardware, and gaming roadmap have never looked stronger. The success we're seeing currently is based on tough decisions we've made previously. We must make choices now for continued success in future years, and a key part of that strategy is the discipline to prioritize the strongest opportunities. We will protect what is thriving and concentrate efforts on areas with the greatest potential, while delivering on the expectations the company has for our business. This focused approach means we can deliver exceptional games and experiences for players for generations to come. Prioritizing our opportunities is essential, but that does not lessen the significance of this moment. Simply put, we would not be where we are today without the time, energy, and creativity of those whose roles are impacted. These decisions are not a reflection of the talent, creativity, and dedication of the people involved. Our momentum is not accidental. It is the result of years of dedicated effort from our teams. HR is working directly with impacted employees to provide severance plan benefits aligned with local laws, including pay, healthcare coverage, and job placement resources to support their transition. Employees whose roles were eliminated are encouraged to explore open positions across Microsoft Gaming, where their applications will be given priority review. The initiative, end quote. The initiative was working on a reboot of the Perfect Dark series with Tomb Raider developer Crystal Dynamics, though now the collaboration with Crystal Dynamics ceased alongside the development of Perfect Dark. A Twitter post from Romero Games co-founder Brenda Romero announced the cancellation of multiple projects on July 3rd, including an unannounced first-person shooter. The next day, Irish publication The Journal reported the studio would close entirely, with Romero subsequently confirming the closure, saying, quote, "We hit every milestone on time, every time. We're heartbroken that it's come to this." It's reported that 100 staff members were affected by the shutdown. Bloomberg's Jason Schreier confirmed additional canceled games, including a project from Banjo-Kazooie developer Rare titled Everwild, an unnamed online game from ZeniMax Online Studios, developer of The Elder Scrolls Online. Head of ZeniMax Online Studios, Matt Fryer, shortly announced afterwards his stepping down from the studio, trusting its future to new head Joe Burba. Meanwhile, multiple Rare developers like Everwild's director Greg Mayles, who worked at the studio for 25 years, and 20-year veteran Luis O'Connor departed the company following the cancellation and workforce cuts. Layoffs not only occurred at the aforementioned studios, but also at Candy Crush creator King, where 200 jobs were lost, and cuts at Raven Software, Sledgehammer Games, Halo Studios, formerly 343 Industries, and Forza Motorsports Turn 10 Studios. Xbox Game Studio Matt Booty followed up on Spencer's staff email, which partly reads, quote, "We have made the decision to stop development of Perfect Dark and Everwild, as well as wind down several unannounced projects across our portfolio," Booty writes. Quote, "As part of this, we are closing one of our studios, The Initiative. These decisions, along with other changes across our teams, reflect a broader effort to adjust priorities and focus resources to set up our team for greater success within a changing industry landscape. We did not make these choices lightly, as each project and team represents years of effort, imagination, and commitment. Our overall portfolio strategy is unchanged. Build games that excite our players, continue to grow our biggest franchises, and create new stories, worlds, and characters. We have more than 40 projects in active development, continued momentum on titles shipping this fall, and a strong slate headed into 2026. While critical reception to the leaked emails have been overwhelmingly negative, Xbox producer Matt Turnbull drew the ire of fans and developers alike through a deleted, tone-deaf LinkedIn post pictured below, where Turnbull suggests AI might provide emotional and career assistance. Fuck off. Per Video Game Chronicles, Andy Robinson, ZeniMax Online producer Eric Smith responded, "Jesus Christ, read the room, dude." While Paul Murphy, presumably of Dragon Snack Games, responded, "I'm sure you're trying to help, but what the fuck? You hired these folks once. At least give them the respect they've earned and assume they have the ability to write their own resumes." The Seattle Times identifies AI as a main reason for the layoffs, despite $26 billion in profit at Microsoft in the months of January to March. The publication points out that due to spending $80 billion in AI infrastructure, the company is seeking to save wherever they can. The same article included an analysis from the University of Washington historian Margaret O'Mara, who says the nature of the layoffs are historically unusual, as the case is typically deindustrialization and times of crisis. The Seattle Times reports that a majority of those laid off by AI were software engineers as opposed to developers.
This is one of the biggest in their entire history as far as cuts go. 9,000 people.
Yeah.
4%
Well,
of the workforce.
in 2022, I want to say they laid off 10,000.
Yeah. And I've neglected to put the numbers. They've laid off a good amount of people already this year.
A bunch.
And now this is just adding on to it. Yes. There's no excuses for this, especially when you look at, even though we've, of course, talked mainly about the video game side of things, the bloated number of employees that were cut, it's because of AI, primarily. And this is what they always were warning against, at least people were warning against. People like those at Xbox and PlayStation always trying to enforce the great things that AI will bring and deny any claim that it's going to take people's jobs. People always kind of knew that was bullshit, and very obviously it's proven here. If you needed an example, this is the perfect one to always go back to. We'll talk a bit more about their Game Pass later. But every single one of the names that we usually see, Satya Nadella, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, Phil Spencer, I've not always maybe, but for a while now, every single time I hear them say something, I just don't like it. Even if it's nothing like particularly bad, they're just not trustworthy, likable people because of the position they occupy. They're not the cause of it, certainly not, but they're the mouthpiece. And when they do these basic, some people are saying that these apology emails or these announcement emails were done by AI. I have no problem believing that to be true. It could not be.
I don't believe that. I believe somebody wrote it. I just don't believe that they took as much time as they should have to write it.
And a lot of that is because I didn't include the full email from Matt Booty, but part of it, the one that I left out, sounds eerily similar, which is why I bring up the AI part to when they were doing the corporate fluff here in Phil Spencer's email. So it seemed like it's just they use a template to say, okay, let's
No, 100%. There's a template. Listen,
yeah.
I've done my best when talking about Microsoft and specifically Xbox Studios leadership to cut them as much slack as I can, because it's a big ship. They are not the front runners of the industry, but they are one of them. But they're not the front runners of the industry, and they're trying to. They have a business strategy and business tactics that we have not seen before. And so we are still waiting to see if it works. And I think the jury's still out on that, on if it works, because to me, these are not Xbox Game Studios failing. It's quite the opposite. They are so successful and they are so big and are bringing in so much money that now Microsoft on head is looking at them and being more hands-on with this project that is Xbox Game Studios. I'm infuriated by this. This is like rage-inducing, and I think for good reasons. I don't think anybody is happy about this. I like to believe that a Phil Spencer and a Sarah Bond and a Matt Booty are enraged by this, because this clearly this call came from on high. This is a Microsoft choice, but to me, this is clearly Xbox is no longer Xbox Game Studios. They are 100% fully Microsoft Gaming Division, and we have clearly lost what made Xbox special, and that was their boldness, their ability to take great chances and push the industry forward in a lot of different interesting ways, and their flexibility and their ability to meet the consumer where they want to be. I think Xbox the last 10 years has been the most consumer friendly platform, period. Like you with their Xbox Play Anywhere programs, with their focus on crossplay and breaking down the walls of crossplay and cross progression, with Game Pass still being the best deal in gaming. I think it has elevated them in Microsoft's portfolio. Clearly not as much as the other guys, but it has elevated them in Microsoft's portfolio to the point to where Microsoft is no longer letting Xbox leadership run the show. And so now we have middlemen. We got, as you called them, Connor, we have mouthpieces. We have faces of Xbox, but they don't do anything at Xbox without direct interference from those on high at Microsoft. And it's fucking frustrating because at the same time, we are seeing these faces, these mouthpieces, this leadership take more and more of a back step with each time that this interference comes. I used to believe these letters from Phil Spencer, and now I don't, because like you said, Connor, they sound eerily similar. There's a template laid down. This letter from Phil Spencer sounds like the letter we read when WB Games laid off people earlier this year. It almost reads beat for beat. Hey, these are talented people. They worked really hard. Because of their hard work, we were able to see great successes. But unfortunately, we're going to cut them. We're going to fire it. We're going to lay them off. And hopefully they find their feet.
Fuck times when we talk
off. Because
really fuck off.
Even more on top of that, Microsoft is seeing, the gaming side of Microsoft is seeing unprecedented success. They in fact saw more success this last quarter than they were expecting to. Their highest high hope expectations. We talk all the time about how gaming, the business side of gaming expectations are way out of control, way out of whack. The expectations are too high. Microsoft's expectations were surpassed. So now this is not a matter of there's not enough money going around. This is not a matter of things are too expensive. Things are too expensive. But that's not what the real problem here is. The problem here, and it's the problem that we've always known it to truly be, is corporate greed. And we just see these execs on high, these Natya Sadelas, and you may as well throw Xbox leadership in there as well, because their paycheck probably looking pretty fucking good also.
Bonuses, because they typically do executives get bonuses.
With bonuses
as a general thing.
Of course, yeah. So now the focus is, we made X amount of money. Oh man, but we spent this amount of money to make that X amount of money. Could we spend less? Let's cut, and just see how much we can cut away in the spending in order to still see that same level of profitability. It's just greed. You're just looking for the X factor or whatever X amount of dollars that you can squeeze out of this stone in order to capitalize on this moment. And it's disgusting. Turn 10 Studios, 50% of 10 Turn Studios has been laid off. That is disgusting. Turn 10 Studios, by far not the biggest studio that Xbox has had, but one of the most consistent studios in the industry. Forza Motorsport is an incredible racing sim game that people love. Does it make a bunch of money? Not really. It doesn't sell bonanzas whenever they make one. What does sell is Forza Horizon, which is more of like a gameplay focused, gameplay centric thing, open world, explore, all of that stuff, progression systems and all that. So now a game studio is big enough to make 2 games, Connor. We've now cut that studio in half. They're no longer big enough to make 2 games, so one of them is probably going to fall away, and it's probably going to be Forza Motorsport. Well, one of the most beloved racing titles and IPs in this industry, gone, more likely than not, or we're going to see a massive dip in quality from one of the most high quality and consistent studios in the industry, which we don't talk about enough because it's such a niche genre. Disgusting. Disgusting.
Microsoft always tries to be at the forefront of technological advancements, what comes next, which makes sense why they're investing into AI. And again, this serves as a really good template for what that's going to look like on a grander scale when more and more people do it. Because it's not that as you said, Tavin, it's not that they aren't making money. It's that they didn't make as much money they could have if they didn't have this AI expansion. So, rather than just accept that as a fact of what's going to happen when you spend a lot of money and time expanding a new technology, a new foray into a new technology, well, why think about, how much money we would have had otherwise and just cut jobs so we have that money. It's Satya Nadella, we covered it a couple months ago. It was in October. He took a $30 million pay raise. Now, a lot of the times when we talk about Microsoft, it's more about Xbox, so you can kind of insulate him from that. But, again, outside of the developer perspective, most of it was software engineers. Did all of those people need to get their jobs cut? Probably most of them didn't. Certainly not as much as was done, while people like Nadella get, even more pay than they already do, which was like last year it was $79.1 million is what he was getting.
When is enough?
Not even
enough,
including
man.
everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never. And the worst part about all of this is what's going to happen. There's not really any AI protections to say, hey, you can't do it the way you did just because AI is coming about. We're already struggling with trying to find a path to not making AI be abused. But here it is being abused. And other companies, if nothing is done about this, what reason do they have to not, if they're expanding into AI, to say, well, why don't we just cut jobs to save money, that we spent? Nothing really.
We're just going to see a mass exodus in this industry. I mean, we're probably just seeing it right now before our very eyes, where all of this talent is going to go away. All of think of these are who are the people? I'm going to get their names right.
Like the big people at Microsoft.
I'm going head of ZeniMax Online Studios, Matt Fryer, announcing he's stepping down as head of studio. Rare, Everwild's director, Greg Mayles, who worked at the studio for 25 years, and 20-year veteran Luis O'Connor departed from the company following. Do you know how much knowledge is being lost with that? How much veteran knowledge of software engineering, game design, just how to best make a game to feel rewarding for players. All of those key things that you don't see and that you can only gain through experience. It's 20 years of knowledge gone because they've had enough. And I don't blame them for that. That's not their fault. They've been working on project after project after project, and it just cannot get out the fucking door, and they're tired of it. They're sick of this. They're burnt out. I don't blame them for leaving, but it's just so sad because we're going to lose so much talent. Think of all of the knowledge that could have been passed down from these people to a new generation. Think of the new generation that sees what's happening to these people and goes, I'm not doing that. No, God, no, I'm not doing that. Why would I ever do that? I'm gonna go work in film. I'm gonna go be a CG artist in film, which those guys also get fucked up. But it's a more secure job than what's happening right now.
Yeah.
These developers need to unionize. We need rules. We need protections, because they are just going to continuously get harassed and abused and beaten down until there's nothing left, man. Or all we ever get is just repetitive drivel slop that we get from a lot of these annualized franchises and all of these choices that we've seen take over in the last couple of years with live service gaming and games as service games that have just bled this fucking industry. It's just
you don't work 25 years for a game company and then just leave because you were done with it for like a personal reason. You did it because external factors made you quit. Made it to where it's not worth
more than likely. I mean, there's always a reason. Sometimes people just want to leave. And that's their prerogative if they just want to do that. Yeah. But I mean, this comes right after layoffs and cancellations of games, so you can draw the line of logic there. You can figure it out. Hey, this is some shit. Like they are not happy with what's happening here, and they are moving on, finding something else, going to do something else, or just fully retiring.
This is not a good outlook. At least we have Game Pass, right?
Moving on to topic number 2, Connor, our second penny topic of the day, your first penny of the day. Take it away.
It's mine. Yes, indeed. A founder behind Dishonored developer attacked subscription service Xbox Game Pass. Founder and creative director at Arkane Studios, Rafael Colantonio, joined the cacophony of voices decrying Microsoft's multi-platform video game subscription service, Xbox Game Pass, in a social media post on X, formerly Twitter. Responding to a direct question aimed at his opinion on the service, the post reads, quote, "I think Game Pass is an unsustainable model that has been increasingly damaging the industry for a decade, subsidized by Microsoft's infinite money. But at some point, reality has to hit. I don't think GP, Game Pass, can coexist with other models. They'll either kill everyone else or give up," end quote. Responding to Colantonio's post, Baldur's Gate 3 publishing director Michael Dowse supported his perspective, tweeting, quote, "What happens when all the money runs out is the most vocal concern in my network, and one of the main economic reasons people I know haven't shifted to its business model. The infinite money thing never made any sense," end quote. Raccoon Logic studio head Alex Hutchinson spoke to the Gamer Social Club in early June to voice his thoughts over Game Pass after their game, Revenge of the Savage Planet, was added to the subscription, reaching 5 million players, according to Microsoft. Quote, It's always a balance between getting the word out and actually trying to stay in business and make some money," Hutchinson said. "Games are incredibly expensive to make, and there's a lot of competition. Personally, I think the whole industry should agree to only games on subscription services a year after release. We need to mimic the old movie model of having it in theaters, then on DVD, then on TV or streaming. The current structure will prove very damaging to anyone who is not owned by a publisher soon if it continues," end quote. Hutchinson was then questioned on why it was decided that Revenge of the Savage Planet would be on Game Pass day one, to which he responded, quote, The hope was that the exposure would lead to people who got the game as part of their subscription to at least buy the little add-on pack or to encourage a friend to buy it on another platform so they could play it together, but we haven't seen that, or at least not yet. What we've seen is that content has been devalued and that people are less willing to pay for things, which in the long run will likely mean less games being made and a lot more studios going under," end quote. While Hutchinson goes on to point out that while the service particularly benefits small and big brand games, it was generally effective when first released, and that Raccoon Logic has enjoyed the relationship with Microsoft. Although important figures in game development like Elder Scrolls V Skyrim director Todd Howard and Rebellion CEO Jason Kingsley have praised Game Pass in the past for its expanded access to older games, room for experimentation, and support for small projects, according to journalist Christopher Dring, the benefits might not be worth it. A Q&A with Drill on Install Base had user Undead Warrior inquire about the earnings related to Game Pass and how it's affected the gaming landscape. Quote, Anecdotally, games that are in Game Pass can expect to lose around 80% of its expected premium sales on Xbox, says Dring. That's the figure that gets thrown around. It's less if it's a big mainstream release, but generally, look at how low Hellblade 2 charted, or where Indiana Jones came, or even Starfield. Game Pass clearly hurt sales on those titles on Xbox. But if it's a game on multiple platforms, it can be beneficial. That surge in players on one Xbox can have a strong impact on sales on PlayStation, for instance. End quote. Head of market analysis at Alinea and Analytics, Reese Elliott, enforces Dring's last statement on GamesIndustry.biz, citing Clear Obscure Expedition 33's position on Game Pass, attributed to its massive success of selling 3.3 million copies in 33 days. Quote, inclusion on Game Pass will always cannibalize premium game sales on Xbox itself, but inclusion can and does snowball into word of mouth that increases sales off-platform, Elliott says. Xbox is reaping the benefits of this itself with its first-party games, but third-party, like Palworld, have also benefited. It can also help put indie games on the map, end quote. Currently, Game Pass is priced from $9.99 to $19.99 per month, depending on if you get the service on PC, Xbox, or both. Rumors have spread regarding a likely price hike in the near future. So, let's start with Arkane's founders' comments, because clearly that was the instigating thing here. I remember it was going around the Twitter block, probably on other social media sites as well, that point about DVD sales. Matt Damon was talking about it and how that would kind of give you a second wind in your game development.
That clip circulates all the time.
Yeah. I've only seen it once. But I mean, that makes sense. And I think you've said this before in the past, Tavin, that it shouldn't be so, pushing for day one releases more, a year down the line or maybe a little bit sooner. Because it does, like, for example, in my own experiences, Lies of P was a game that I played, thoroughly enjoyed. I got it on Game Pass. Where I was at the time when that had come out, I had all of a sudden gotten this urge to play it. And I, of course, got it on Game Pass because games are, expensive nowadays, even more so now, especially recently, that I was like, well, I want to save money and just get it on Game Pass. If it wasn't available on Game Pass, I can give you a matter-of-fact guarantee I would have bought it on a platform. I wouldn't have just let it go by because I wanted to play it. And recently we had covered how the developers over at Round 8 Studios, I believe it was called, over in South Korea, gained a Nintendo Switch 2 and extra vacation time and I think pay bonus as well because of how well the game did. The numbers at that time were that with the DLC coming out, it had reached 3 million players. It might have been 2 million, but I'm pretty confident it was 3 million.
It was 3.
Copies sold, but that's copies sold. About 7 million people played the game in total. Yep. How many of those people, because you already had the 3 million in sales going on, who would have bought it full price without Game Pass being a factor? Now, by that same token, as this article goes into, did it only get as much popularity because of Game Pass, and that helped it along to get that much sales on the other consoles? Because I'm presuming a lot of the other sales were on PlayStation rather than Xbox or PC. But again, that's kind of, you can't really say that for certain because it could have, but it also could have, it had no impact at all, just being on Game Pass. And so it's a tricky position for developers to exist in, like going to, the Raccoon Games guy, Alex Hutchinson. Because when you have such a small game, and you're a lot more likely to fail if you're not a big publisher and you're getting your name out there that much, Game Pass can help that word of mouth spread along a lot more. I just questioned whether that's the case for most games. I feel like it's not. I feel like those are more, exceptions may be a bit of a strong word, but that's not the norm.
Yeah, I'm with you on a couple of things here. The thing about Game Pass is it immediately becomes tricky, right? Because you see a lot of successes. Game Pass does allow room for smaller games to be experimental, and for a big publisher like Xbox, you're allowed to get games like Keeper from Double Fine, which, by the way, jumping off of the conversation from the last topic about studios, falling victim to this, Double Fine needs to get away from Xbox really badly. Double Fine needs to go because Keeper's not going to get the job done, not going to produce the sales that Microsoft is looking for, and we are going to lose one of the most important small developers, one of the most art pushing art forward in the medium developers. In the medium's entire history, we're going to lose that. If mark my words, maybe as soon as a year from now, which is so painful to even think about. But back to Game Pass. You see a lot of success stories because of Game Pass. Expedition 33 is the biggest game of the year. right now, or at least has generated the most conversation online because of it, and has seen great success. 3.3 million sales in 33 days. Nothing to sniff at, nothing to turn your nose up at. That's good, especially from a first-time developer with junior devs on the team and who are putting out their first game. That's massive, I am reminded of I forget who did, but there's an industry legend who says this kind of flies in the face of what I just said, but who says you never want your first game to be the big hit. You always want like your second or third game to be the big hit so that you can learn lessons from the past. But if your first game is a success, you think you can just replicate it. You can replicate that success again easily. A funny quote, but I hope that doesn't happen to the developers behind Expedition 33. So Game Pass can be a very, very useful and vital tool for distribution, getting people aware of your title. It boosts awareness for these titles, but it at the same time can be detrimental to sales. There's already this conversation, even though Game Pass isn't. Well, I guess it's actually pretty old now, but it's not like. It's not as old as like a Netflix thing or anything like that, but there's the turn of phrase. Oh, that's a Game Pass game. That's a game that I'll try it on Game Pass, but I'm not gonna actually spend money on it, and that's sad because games are hard to make. They take a long time, and they're very expensive to make, and to be sort of downgraded in that way from the public is, I'm sure, very disheartening. And then you just see a lot of cases where game studios and other publishers were not able to recoup on the costs of their game because they went to Game Pass day one. So now, I don't think Game Pass should go away. I don't think it can go away at this point, but I don't think it should go away. I don't think it generates enough revenue to fulfill the promise that it laid out for in the beginning. So I think that means we need to take a step back. And we need to reconfigure it and retool it into a way to where it would make more sense from a business perspective to put a game on Game Pass. What does that look like? I don't know. What comes to mind to me is, yes, having a delay. Don't do Game Pass on day one. Maybe Xbox Game Studios games can be a day one thing, because that's their money. So.
And they're gonna lay them off even if the game does well. Clearly, so,
clearly, right? And so that's a fine risk for them, but for everybody else, I don't think you should do Game Pass day one. Eliza P found great success on Game Pass. That's great, but imagine if everybody went to Game Pass for Eliza P and had lost. Connor, you brought up 7 million players, only 3 million sales. How many more people would have bought it if it was not on Game Pass? You could counter that with how many people would not have bought it because they didn't know about it, because the conversation didn't get circulated because of Game Pass's influence. It's sort of a double-edged sword in that way, in the effects of Game Pass. So I don't think Game Pass day one should happen for third-party publishers. I think there should be a delay, probably 6 months, or maybe just 3 months. 3 to 6 months, I think, feels like a good time. And then depending on, it all depends on your game and your scope, and these are things that back-end business meetings need to have. I also think Game Pass needs to do a better job at pushing people to spend money on the game, in whatever form that takes. Hey, maybe they should have some kind of tier for developers and publishers of like, yeah, you can play the first couple hours of our game on Game Pass if you're subscribed to Game Pass.
Yeah.
You can play the first 3 to 5 hours, and then from there you got to buy the game, depending on the length. That maybe that can be decided by whoever's making the game or putting it on there. Sort of like a super extended demo, as opposed to a slice of life demo that we normally get.
Highlight the features of, if you decide to buy this game, you'll pick up where you left off. And it also pushes you to buy on Microsoft services.
Yeah.
Because no one, of course, wants to go play elsewhere.
Or
again,
maybe, and I don't like doing this because it reminds me of like the days of having to buy a new game to get access to online multiplayer or something, or buying a game new, or pre-order bonuses, which I think have been very, very damaging to the industry from an art perspective. But maybe that needs to be hey, there's some content in this game you can't get unless you buy the game.
Yeah.
I also I also think Game Pass needs to, hey, you've played 20 hours of this game. Would you consider buying it to help support the devs or something like that? Or having some sort of, oh God, we shuddered at it when it was first mentioned, but I'm going to bring it up now because I think it can be used as a good idea, of some type of donation, some type of tipping, some type of, hey, you've put 100 hours, Game Pass needs to do this. You've put 100 hours into this game. Would you like to send $30 to the developer or to the publisher, to the development studio, so that they can recoup some profit here? Somebody would do it. I would do it.
Like, well, and little do you know, in the fine print, a percentage of the donation you give goes to Microsoft, because technically we're dealing with this money, so not so much, not all of it's going to it.
Connor, you're right, but I mean, they're going to get a percentage from the game sale anyway.
Yeah, and this is gambling, is what it is. Because something like Expedition 33, there's obviously the point was like, it could have bolstered on other platforms, and this is only in hindsight. I get that. It did not need Xbox Game Pass. It would have reached around the same, maybe not as much, but it certainly would have gotten near that. There's not many games that have come out this year.
Maybe not as fast.
Maybe not as fast, no. But so far, I mean, there haven't been that many big games for people to, talk about and go crazy about. One of them was Expedition 33, and the reception for that was so positive and so wide-sweeping that I refuse to believe, and certainly not give Microsoft the credit that that's because of your Game Pass service. I think that was just going to happen by it came out.
Not the key factor. No, absolutely not. No. Expedition 33 was going to be a hit no matter what. But would it have been a 3 million copies sold hit in a month? That I don't know.
Further than that.
I don't know.
Further than that, they don't know it was going to be a hit necessarily. This game more so than not, but when you expand it to all the other games that would be on Game Pass, they may not be as so confident. I mean, for example, Keeper. I certainly wouldn't hedge my bets on that blowing up. It could. Like Helldivers could.
Well, it's
but
Double
neither
Fine.
one I would want to take a guess. Yeah, but I mean, it still could.
You're right. You're right.
Blue Legend got big back in the day.
No, it didn't. That's why you didn't get another one, Connor.
No,
So yeah, I like this idea of we need to mimic old movie models to from theaters to DVD to TV and then streaming in some form like that. I think Game Pass could probably go from or to that. It works a little differently, and again, I think there just needs to be a flexibility to it. I think Game Pass is a great tool, but it can't be the main. It can't be the main source, That's when it's like, ooh, I don't know about that. Because it also just devalues games. And we can complain about the price of games all we want. They have immense value. They provide immense value. That's why, the jump to $70 wasn't that big of a deal for me, because games have been getting bigger and are providing more and more entertainment, content, and just value. The value of games has increased substantially over the last 10 to 15 years. Now, you can nitpick that argument all you want to death of microtransactions, live service, XY thing. Those things will always exist. Back in my day, it was also microtransactions, but it was DLCs, and it was you had to buy the game new to get access to the multiplayer and things like that. And before that, it was, you had to buy an expansion pass for the game to do XY thing, or it came with, what is the word for, the guitar in Guitar Hero is a, not add-on.
Accessory?
Accessory. It was a peripheral.
Yeah.
Things like that. Those used to be the big thing that were killing the games industry. There's always something killing the games industry. And today it is live service, subscription models, and microtransactions. And all these things. But we always learn to roll with the punches. And you just need to keep rolling for the punches. The last 10 years of games were better than the decade before. I was around for both decades. I'm attesting to that, and I'm putting my feet down on that. So games are more valuable than they've ever been. And for some reason, the people think that we need to spend less and less money on them, even though they cost more and they provide more than they ever did in the past. I don't know. It's a tricky balance. I'm not saying jumping to $80 is the right solution, but I don't think going to Game Pass is either. So we're in this unfortunate thing of hey, $80 is incoming. It's coming, and I fucking hate it. I hate it so goddamn much. I don't think it's necessary. But Game Pass is devaluing games all the fucking time. But Game Pass is also a great deal for gamers. What do you, the gamer, want? What does this industry want to make it work? Because the genie's out of the bottle, and you can't put it back in.
You know the answer, Tavin? Is to raise Game Pass subscription services, the prices. That's how we do it. We don't have to get rid of it. We don't have to make these changes you're talking about. We just need to more money. Me now.
More money now, you know? And that's not, you know, that rise in subscription price, I'm sure will offset development costs, right? It's not just going to go into the pocket of some gaming exec or anything like that.
I will say one last bit because it does annoy me. Hi-Fi Rush as the final example.
Yep.
The game that got as popular because of Game Pass. It was used. I remember, like, hey, get Game Pass. When they realized how popular it was,
like 1 million players in a day or some crazy shit.
And they closed the studio down.
Yep.
Not just the game. Another second game that was being made. I mean, you can't trust these people. You can't.
Well, I think it's a Xbox didn't buy ZeniMax for Tango Gameworks, you know? Tango Gameworks had a great game on their hands and gave it to Xbox. You know, Xbox got lucky in that sense that they were able to call Hi-Fi Rush theirs. But I think with or without the success of Hi-Fi Rush, I think that studio would have been closed down anyways. I think it was just an emptying the chamber type thing. Now, I don't think it should have been closed down. I think it should have been sort of like what Toys for Bob did and sold off into independents or sold to another thing. Like instead of closing them down and ruining that, potentially ruining that studio forever. We'll see if with whatever comes out next, if anything ever comes out next from them. I hope something. So we'll see on that. But yeah, it's all just it's so fucking tricky. And then also the question is, massive success for Hi-Fi Rush. One of the best reviewed games of that year. One of the most popular games of that year. Yes, a lot of people played it. How many people bought it?
Not as much. That's the problem. Whereas like Game Pass isn't that necessarily great because once again, that was only on Xbox and PC, wasn't it? It wasn't on PlayStation.
No, it came to PlayStation later.
Okay. Yeah.
It was Hi-Fi Rush was one of the first round of games that came to PlayStation that the walls came down on.
Yeah.
Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, another one. I can't remember right now.
Whatever that might be.
Connor, moving on to our next topic of the day. Not our final, our third topic of the day. One that's a little more rumor milly, but I think has enough credence that we can probably talk about it and see. So, Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil... This is my second penny of the day. No, is it mine or yours?
We never decided. Remember how we always used to do that? We were like, who's going to do this one? Okay, there we go.
You know, it's not so much that we're like not deciding anymore, Connor. It's just more that I just forget. and I'm so focused on getting the show rolling and all of the assets that I just forget that part. I'll do it.
I'll remember that then.
Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer set to depart one next-gen console Let me try all that again. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer set to depart once next-gen consoles release. Call of Duty leaker The Ghost of Hope took to Twitter claiming Phil Spencer will retire as CEO of Microsoft Gaming and hands the reins over to Microsoft executive Sarah Bond once the next form of Xbox console is released. Quote, Phil Spencer will be retiring from his role as CEO of Microsoft Gaming after the launch of the next-generation Xbox, the post reads. Phil Spencer is working closely with Sarah Bond and her team to ensure a smooth transition for her take over as CEO of Microsoft Gaming once he retires. Unclear as of yet who would take over as president of Xbox when Sarah Bond becomes the CEO of Microsoft Gaming. Microsoft would go on to deny the claim with head of Xbox Communications Kari Perez speaking to The Verge the day the previously mentioned tweet was posted saying, quote, Phil is not retiring anytime soon. Although a retirement in the near future was refuted, it's unclear how far out the next generation console will launch since Microsoft only recently revealed long-term plans in a partnership with AMD to have a next-gen console that's not locked to a single online store. Spencer joined Microsoft in 1988 as an intern, eventually working up to the position of general manager of Microsoft Game Studios EMEA in 2001. Spencer served in the position until 2008, where he became a general manager of Microsoft Studios and corporate vice president a year later. Spencer would work in a number of other roles until being elevated to CEO in 2022.
It's important to note The Ghost of Hope Oh, I said Call of Duty leaker, but a successful one. So it's not like it's just some random guy who'll occasionally say things and they're wrong a lot. Now, the really curious thing is the response, because when I first saw they refuted it, I was like, oh, well, this is probably not true. But then they said specifically, Phil is not retiring anytime soon. Kind of hinted at it at the article. Soon is like, I would think a year, 2 years from now. The next console, I feel like, is going to be a bit longer than 1 or 2 years. Unclear as of now, but it almost seems like they're denying the claim as of right now, but for financial reasons, they don't want to come out and just say, yeah, he'll leave then. Because I'm assuming that has to have some kind of echo on, like, stockholders, financial somewhere, if your big guy is leaving the studio.
If this was just rumors and it wasn't serious, they wouldn't acknowledge it.
Exactly. That's
how many. Exactly. I feel like I've seen these rumors circulated the last like 5 years, at least probably twice a year. I see these rumors get circulated. This one had a little more juice behind it, and I think for good reason. Phil Spencer's probably looking for his out. If I'm Phil Spencer, I'm fucking sick of this shit. I'm doing the best I can. I'm out here selling Xbox as a platform. I'm selling Game Pass. I'm selling all these games. I'm doing my best to big up these studios. I'm doing my best to juggle what Xbox fans want and what Microsoft wants. And, it's going the way it's going, and I'm the one who gets the heat for it every time something bad happens, like all these massive layoffs. If I'm Phil Spencer, fuck this shit, dude. It's not worth it. There's a reason PlayStation became less personable over the last 15 years. It's because when shit hits the fan, the faces of these things get a lot of backlash and a lot of heat on them. You can argue whether it's rightfully so or not, all you want. So, very often, the face of a platform does not make all of the decisions. Now, Phil Spencer is the face of the platform and CEO of Microsoft Gaming Division, so you do be making choices, bro. But I get it, and I think personally, it's a good time to leave. We've got the next Xbox in development. It's funny that PlayStation said that they've got a PlayStation 6 in mind right now. Of course they do. Xbox does as well. They know what they're doing for the next generation. They know what metrics that they're going to be shooting for and the technology that they're doing. All of that is in R&D right now. But expect a next generation of consoles. Connor, you're right. Probably in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
That's just how this works, And I think that's usually a good time to head out. We had PlayStation leadership leave at the launch of the PlayStation 5, and then we got the Jim Ryan era, and that was an era. Or right before the PlayStation 5, maybe. We had Jim Ryan take the reins and take over, and that was an era. Fucking, we're out of that now, but we're still feeling the effects of it. So we'll see how all of this nets out in the next couple of years. Yeah, Phil Spencer's gonna leave, and Sarah Bond seems to make the most sense as to replace him. I like Sarah Bond in that role. I just wish I had faith in Xbox as a platform.
Yeah, I've been critical of Phil Spencer in the past, and I've only become bolstered in that belief with the story we talked about at the beginning, with Microsoft laying off 9,000 people. Lackluster email by him that just makes me think, you don't give a shit. I also don't know if there's some kind of contractual obligation he has to stay.
Well, he may not have been able to write. It may not have been his words. You know what I mean? But it came from him. But it may have been a message from Microsoft on high of send this email out. That's me being an executive apologist, like I tend to sometimes be. But these things
you're being fair. Yeah. In the case of Phil Spencer, I think if you put your name on something, regardless of where it came from, you're responsible for it. But even aside from that,
you're right. But you don't always have a choice on what you put your name on.
And that kind of leads to what I think about with Phil Spencer. Is he contractually obligated to stay with Microsoft up to a certain point? I feel like no. Because when have I ever heard of an executive being required to sign a contract saying you're going to be from here to here? I also feel like that's not in the best interest of the company itself. If they somehow don't work out, you don't want to be, forced for, your next couple of years of game development, which of course, seeing as how it takes a lot of time for that kind of stuff to ramp up, you would want somebody in there that's going to be in control of the situation. Now, so with that line of thought, my criticisms of Phil Spencer maybe aren't going to ramp up because no, I can't. I shouldn't say that. Point is, I see him as more pathetic now because if all of this is going on and you potentially could leave whenever you want, and I know you're a millionaire, what reason besides your own ass do you have for not saying anything? Like at all, especially with how often you branded yourself.
You don't
as
want
like,
to damage the brand, and Xbox or Microsoft can fire you. Like
they can, but that's what I'm talking of. In like, that's where it comes to like class becomes an issue with me because at a certain point when you have so much money like these people do, any kind of issue that you
and they can sue you too for damages, and that's gonna hurt your wallet. Like
that's my point. Where it's like if he's not required to stay with the company, you could leave it and then say what you want. You could quit, and that be your quitting message.
Well, you don't want to burn bridges like that.
I get what you're saying, but that's my point of why I don't respect Phil Spencer because he's a person who, again, he brands himself as like, I care about the gaming community and the culture, and then
there's integrity. There's integrity there's integrity in, hey, I'm the head of a ship and I'm driving the ship to a destination. I want to make sure that it's in good hands. Or as good of hands as I can get. I want to put this ship in the best position possible to get where it needs to go before I leave.
But even with that, he's overseen 2 massive layoffs. It's like doesn't seem like you're doing that very well if that's your goal.
Well, again, these came from Microsoft on high. It's not like
they are.
I'm sure he had to have some kind of input into the decision of who gets laid off and how these layoffs are conducted. But I don't think it's pathetic to be like, hey, I've got to deal with the bad part of business. Mm-hmm. Business sucks.
It's my own idealistic view when I see somebody who, does these things and rationalizes it the way you're saying he would, which all makes sense from that world. My response is me and most people don't give a shit and shouldn't care. Especially because
I think Connor, I love you for your ideals, but I think very often that they're quite unrealistic.
Sometimes, maybe not this one where you're doing nothing and you're just taking the brunt of the,
We don't know that he's doing nothing.
Sure, but insignificant. Whatever he's doing.
If you want to go that way and feel that way, sure. But yeah,
I'll be harsh.
And that's fine. They're not like I don't believe Phil Spencer is the Mr. Burns of Microsoft going, yes. How can we make
Mr.
more
Burns,
money?
No.
I don't believe he's that guy. But, there is a Mr. Burns at Microsoft. So you got to deal with that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's tricky and it's tough. And I still remember all the good that Phil Spencer did in the earlier years of his career leading up to when he started taking leadership roles and how he interacted with the community and how he listen, we can criticize Phil Spencer's run as CEO of Microsoft or of Microsoft Gaming all we want. There's plenty to criticize. There really is. I'm not gonna sit here and act like Phil Spencer never brought anything good or positive to the platform of Xbox.
No. Of course he didn't. I mean, it's more just like where Xbox is now, where Microsoft is now.
Yeah, and shit sucks.
Yeah, and those praiseworthy aspects that he's helped with in the past just aren't really applicable anymore. Like in this current period,
I just don't know where. I don't know where Phil could be doing better.
Mm-hmm. Not being there.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. And so I don't know. This is exhausting, and like the highlights of Phil's tenure at Xbox are very high for me, and I, as a personality, I have liked Phil Spencer for a long time, but I can't deny that he has started feeling more and more corporate in the last couple of years. I think that is in response to the heavy backlash that he's been getting when the business side and all these layoffs come in. I think there's been a clear difference between what was the event that happened that caused him to it didn't cause him to go on the Kind of Funny show. He was planned to, and then it was the
Redfall.
It was Redfall. It was Redfall, and then it was also the acquisition went bad. Was going bad at the time. So I think there's been a very clear pre and post Phil since that moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's a smart choice, and I think Xbox needs to stop. I mean, we said this when they shut down Tango GameWorks. Xbox needs to stop being so face friendly, because it causes the faces of Xbox to say things that I'm sure they believe in the moment when they're saying them, or they're at least selling the promise. But then when the promise doesn't get realized and studios like Tango GameWorks get shut down, it feels like they lied to us.
Well, they get that job for a reason, because they are willing to bend those kinds of things in the name of a company.
What?
Like, you hire people that you know aren't going to be, back talking you. I mean, for example, somebody gets as high as he has since working there as long as he has. He's sucked a few cocks, metaphysically, to the point where it's like, oh, they may have like a comfortable understanding, especially with how he's acting now, that you're not going to rock the boat in a way we don't want you to.
You don't want boats rocked. Like,
exactly. So that's
I know, Connor, idealistically you want boats rocked, but I promise you don't. All of this conversation about how Xbox is failing, XYZ, and all of this conversation that we're having right now, imagine how much worse it would be if a Phil Spencer said, yeah, shit sucks. Like, it's terrible out here. Like, Microsoft is making me do all these things I don't want to do, X, Y, da, 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 da. If Phil Spencer did all the things that you want him to do, we would look at Xbox even worse than we look at it right now.
That's why you should have integrity and quit and then say these things.
That's
me being...
Connor, I'm saying, well, you don't really want that. You may think you want that because idealistically it sounds nice and it feels more respectful, but I promise you that's not something you really do want.
The problem is that even with them not doing that, we just cover what the results are. Massive layoffs, massive bonuses.
So why make
money?
So why make it worse?
I don't see how that would really change much. Again, we have to see it actually take place for it to like see really what that would entail. But it seems like regardless of whether they're succeeding,
I don't understand how, because if Phil Spencer were to suddenly turncoat and go, oh, it's terrible, and talk all this shit, we would look at Xbox even worse than we look at it now. Public perception matters. Public perception does affect your bottom line.
It does, yeah.
And so things would get worse if he did that.
Of course, they would. For them. But I don't care about Microsoft when they're not doing anything for anybody except themselves.
Okay, Connor. But when things get worse for Microsoft, it gets worse for these developers that we care about. So, but I think you can stand on this hill all you want of integrity and ideals and all these things that you perceive to be true, but it's going to make things worse for the people that we care about.
I still push back on that, seeing as how no indication we have is that towing the line helps either. I get what you're saying. It's hard to say that as like confidently as you're saying it without there actually even being close to an example.
It would be worse. I don't understand how that's not better. Is because preventing things from being. You're in a bad situation. The situation is bad. It's a really bad situation. I wish we weren't here. Everything sucks. It could be so much worse. And I'm not saying I'm not looking for a silver lining. I'm just stating it could be worse. I'm not saying that this is an acceptable line. This is not acceptable. Let me be very clear. What Microsoft has done in the last week is not acceptable. Changes should happen. This is why I said earlier in this podcast, these developers need to unionize. They need to. They need protections because shit is bad. But if shit was worse, why would you want shit to be worse, Connor Elliott? Because it makes you feel better about Phil Spencer?
Well, I think
I would rather feel worse about Phil Spencer and shit not be worse.
Partly, the world's kind of already on fire, so what's a little bit more chaos?
From that, no, I'm not. I'm not co-signing that at all. Absolutely not.
Aside from that, though, I think of a quote. I'm not going to attribute the quote because that would upset some people. The person who said it, I do not agree with. It is not Hitler. Which is. The quote goes something, I'm definitely paraphrasing. I feel like I am. There is great turmoil under heaven. The conditions are excellent. Which is to say that when things get bad, it creates the opportunity for something good to come out of it. And when we're in this period of time when, regardless of whether they, again, toe the line or don't, shit news is going to come out from every game studio, including Microsoft. And any boat that might be rocked isn't going to make, it's not going to bring the downfall of Microsoft or Xbox gaming studios I think you're over-exaggerating the impact that would have rather than just being like, okay, I can't shit on Phil Spencer anymore, which is how I see it. If he were to come out and say something, I'd be like, hey, well, at least he did something.
But what did he do? He just all that would have done is make him look better in your eyes.
Yeah,
by actively making the company that employs hundreds of thousands of people look worse.
Yes.
Like,
it's all about
do
transparency.
you see how like that doesn't work? What you're saying, Connor, works on a 1-to-1 level, of you to me level. Yeah. I recently was working for a corporation. I got a lot of problems with those corporations. I have talked shit to you about that corporation, but if I'm in a leadership position at that corporation, I'm a face of that corporation, and I go and I talk shit to the general mass public, that's gonna make the situation of the people who still work there way worse. Good how?
Could.
Oh, could. Oh, okay. Could. I mean, yes, could. We're working with nothing but hypotheticals here, Connor. I think your hypothetical is way more likely for bad shit to happen than good shit. And the only benefit you're getting out of this is you like Phil Spencer a little bit more.
Well, also, I want transparency because clearly they're trying to replace jobs outside of just game development, Microsoft as a whole, with AI.
It's not a Phil Spencer problem. I mean, it is a Phil Spencer problem, but it's not
part of it.
It's not a problem enacted by Phil Spencer.
Yeah, exactly.
So
if he's not
what good would Phil Spencer talking shit do?
Again, potentially transparency. If he also obviously this is getting into the realm of
so let's give Phil the benefit of the doubt and say Phil's influence on Xbox has been more positive than negative. Assuming that there's a lot of backroom politics that we don't know about, right? Let's cut him that and say his influence has been more positive than negative, right? Mm-hmm. If a Phil Spencer like individual whose overall influence has been positive creates a negative outcome for mega evil corporation Microsoft, they will never hire a Phil Spencer ever again. And then you're not getting the positive influences that the Phil Spencers of the world can create for these platforms and for these employees. It just takes a higher level of thinking here, Connor, than to just be like, you know how bad it is, just say how bad it is.
I get what you're saying, but again, in my case, this applies to me as well. All of this is hypothetical. Even you assuming that Phil Spencer did anything to really steer it in a way that helps employees. Yes,
but you have to. I mean, to form an argument, you have to create grounds for an argument.
Yeah, which is why I would like to see at least an example somewhere, because it seems like the games industry is full of people like Phil Spencer's of varying degrees, where they'll do anything that the company tells them to do, and the gaming industry just continues to get worse and worse and worse, and their existence, whatever positive effect they might have on it,
you're only assuming Phil Spencer's doing nothing. All of this is assumptions, and I mean,
he could be doing nothing. He could be doing something that doesn't matter. He could be doing something that's helping them. And he agrees with them. And everything he said up until this point is because he knows how to do PR, to talk to you and make you think, oh, this guy knows what he's a gamer. He cares about the community. We may not care about that at all.
Potentially.
But now I'm not saying he does. I'm just saying if anything, I would say one thing outweighs the other.
Sure.
It's just a...
Yeah, but I just think the idea of wanting someone to leave and then talk shit is immature. You never want to burn these bridges, and you never want to potentially make it worse for other people.
I'll burn something. I'll burn those bridges, and then some. Not violence against a person.
I mean, I also think you're speaking from a perspective of someone who does not have as much responsibility as a Phil Spencer,
nor as much millions of dollars.
Right.
And I could say,
but he's got sure, yes, he's got a lot of money, and yes, he has the ability to just cut ties and run and be fine. Right. He does have that ability. But would that be better for the people under him? That's where responsibility comes in. It's not about you anymore. It's about the people you're responsible for. Now, you can counter that with, well, he's not doing a good job of it. And maybe he's not. But clearly, he's got bosses too. And they seem to be way worse.
Yeah.
You gotta remember, a lot of people lost their jobs and not all of them were in games. 9,000 people
No.
across Microsoft's entire board lost jobs. You know, I don't know what the number is on just the gaming division, but a lot of people lost jobs. And
Yeah.
well,
You know,
there's no
easy.
You're not complaining about the Phil Spencer. I don't even know how many. 2,000 people in Xbox. I don't know. I'm throwing out a random number. The 2,000 people under Xbox under Phil Spencer lost their jobs. That fucking sucks. You don't have a Phil Spencer to point your finger at and wave for the other 7,000.
No, because I mean, I think we kind of touched on this topic a couple weeks ago. I'm more just like, I understand in the same way the sky is blue that the figures like Satya Nadella and anybody on that kind of level in Microsoft as a whole are irredeemable people. I don't see them as, people that have any value to the life other than themselves. So Phil Spencer, I don't think on that same level. So I don't hate him as much. But because of that, whenever things like this happen and he's making stupid remarks like the email he sent out, I have nothing but bad things to say about you, even if you're objectively less worse than Satya Nadella. But, we'll see how Microsoft proceeds from here. Maybe they'll hire a bunch of people to offset these layoffs that happened. Which, by the way, we never talked about it. They just got rid of Perfect Dark for a tax write-off. You kind of brought that up.
Oh, probably, yeah, 100%. I mean, we didn't even talk about how
no.
Hey, we've this big beautiful bill just fucking passed, and it's going to give a bunch of tax breaks for the wealth or for the rich, even more tax breaks for them. And Connor, those tax breaks don't include Phil Spencer's. He's not benefiting from that. The Satya Nadellas are. He's not.
I think it is in like a certain income bracket.
I don't think Phil Spencer's in that income bracket.
You don't think?
No. Because the people it benefits are way richer than you can even conceive.
They benefit the most, certainly.
I mean, maybe he does. I could be talking out of my ass. I don't know how much Phil Spencer makes.
Yeah, I didn't look that up.
That's a great thing that we should ask because you didn't look it up, Connor, but he makes millions of dollars.
I do. I know he makes millions. I don't know how many millions. I guess no is in the confident no. Oh, yes.
The AI overview says has an estimated worth of $25 million. His annual salary is reported to be $10 million. This is income and net worth, a result of leadership and strategic. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's not public, but
it would never be public. It would never be public.
Yeah. I guess in the
net worth is a tricky thing because net worth is not the money you have in the bank.
I remember seeing, I think it was a tweet from some celebrity at some point who was bringing up their net worth, and they were like, I don't fucking have this much. Even close. And they were like a big name person.
Robert Downey Jr. did an interview once where he was like, when you get the Googled thing, he laughs at it every time because it's either like way too low or way too high. And he's like,
That's funny. Guess he would know.
So yeah, net worth, yeah, but reported to be $10 million a year. Okay, so he's got some millions. Yeah, that's a lot, but you gotta understand, there's people above him who make way more money, more fucking money, like a stupid amount more. Like $10 million is not likely that you'll achieve that in your lifetime, but it's conceivable that you could.
79 million a year, maybe less so.
Listen, it gets exponentially harder with every million above that. So you got to look at people who have billions of dollars and go, how is that ethical? It's not.
It is not. Clearly, as we see with Microsoft.
Connor, we got to... Sorry, I'm having quick technical difficulties, but I got it here. All right, Connor, we're moving on to our final topic of the day. This is going to be your final penny of the day. Go ahead, take it away, friend.
Yeah, your voice is cutting out every now and then. I don't know if that was what you.
Yeah, it's a Discord thing, and it might be because of positioning on the mic. It's fine on things because the recording is not pulling, but it is tough with you.
Okay, good. I'm fine with it being tough on me. We got a announcement, an Anthem game update. You guys remember Anthem? You can probably guess what this might be. Hi, everyone. We have an important update to share regarding Anthem. After careful consideration, we will be sunsetting Anthem on July 12th, 2026. This means that the game will still be playable online for the next 180 plus days. As of today, you can no longer purchase in-game premium currency, but you can still use your remaining balance until the servers go offline. We deeply appreciate your dedication, passion, and support for over the years, and we'd like to thank you for that. There was no dedication and passion and support for this game. Was there?
I mean, everything has a fan base.
I guess so.
I saw somebody a few months
you're
ago
right,
playing
you're
Anthem on TikTok.
Right, fair enough. There's always people. So good to those people. But they went on to answer a couple of questions, such as how long will I have to play Anthem? It'll be available specifically until January 12th, 2026. You cannot play the game in offline mode, as it was designed to be an online mode. So once servers go offline, that's it. Can I still install Anthem if I previously purchased the game? Yes. So you can. What can you do with it?
That's it.
And yeah, right.
You can look at the main menu. You know.
Yeah. Hey, that's probably. I don't even know if it's a good in-game menu. Why can I no longer purchase Anthem or in-game currency over the next 180 days? Anthem will still be playable online, and you can use the last of your in-game currency. Yeah, so that's what they just said earlier. It'll be removed from the EA Play playlist on August 15th, 2025. And, positive end. There's no layoffs as a result of this. You would expect there to be with.
I mean, we just had massive layoffs from EA last month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a result of not really because of Dragon Age, but definitely partly.
Dragon Age and Football Club failed to perform.
Football Club, that was the big one. Yes, That was where the main issue was put onto it. Now, this kind of coincides with a conversation that I've been out of the loop on, because apparently it's, as Tavin kind of told me about, it's gained a lot more traction on YouTube with YouTube personalities, particularly people like Pirate Software. But a proposal was made called the Stop Killing Games
initiative.
It's just called Stop Killing Games. Yeah, but I've only seen it being called Stop Killing Games.
Yeah.
The goal of it's European focused, so all you American guys can stop listening because that's all you care about. In this case, it's as of right now, the big effort is to make it to where it's harder just to sunset games like this, mainly online games, because there has been a recent move towards having games, even ones that have only been out for a little bit, and removing them to where they can no longer be played in online format. Now, there have been some pushback from game publishers, which is to be expected. Clearly, it seems like this is kind of going towards the government route to circumvent asking the game companies to allow this to happen, and instead make the EU do it, which is the best bet. You had brought up to me that there's some issues with, of course, funding it, because it takes a lot of effort and time and money. But I also think back to the older days of when, you would have lots of servers. Even today, you have these games exist that are run by players themselves and don't require the developer to oversee it. And, with that aspect being, to acknowledge that aspect, I see some kind of way to help Anthem stay alive. Not, of course, with EA's help, but with, larger government practices. Though, I don't think that's going to happen at this rate. Maybe it shoots off somehow. Maybe it takes root in the minds of people in the EU who care about video games, which I don't think there's that many of them. But,
yeah,
again, money talks.
So when it comes to Anthem, this is disappointing. But expected, but still disappointing. Anthem, by all means, not a terrible game, but not a great one either. But certainly had fans, and it's just sad to see something that a bunch of people worked on for years, just no longer be playable. You can't experience Anthem anymore. Like it's gonna, when it's gone, and that's it. This is why things like this Stop Killing Games initiative exists. And yeah, to sort of summarize what you were saying there, Stop Killing Games is an initiative in the I forget who specifically did it. Someone in the UK. But their whole idea is that the government getting involved in keeping games alive that no longer are seeing support from their development studios and from their publishers and so forth, so that you can continue to it's a what is the word for the thing that I always care about?
Continuity, consistency?
No, for keeping things alive for
preservation.
Preservation. Jesus Christ, with my brain today. Hey, get out of there. Sorry.
Quit doing that shit.
Anyways, it's a big case for game preservation, specifically with a focus on games with online components, like Anthem. But games in general, it's a focus on having the government getting involved in game preservation. And noble, I like it. Personally, I'm rooting. Any way that we can get better preservation in games is a-okay in my book. I like that. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's feasible. And I don't think it should be our focus right now. But at the same time, I can't deny that it's sad when games like Anthem go away. It sucks when Concords only get to live for 11 days. It sucks when what's another one? Suicide Squad, Multiverses, Knockout City. All these games that have fan bases and people like them get shut down and go away forever. I'm kind of disappointed that I can't play Marvel's Avengers anymore. I know that game, not the best game in the world, and I know a lot of people hate on it for a lot of very valid reasons. I liked it. Every once in a while, I wish I could load up, play Captain America, and beat up on some robots. And it sucks that that's just not an option anymore. You just can't anymore. And it's not right. But this is another case where I think ideals meet reality. And because video games are a tech-based medium, they're rooted in technology, everything you do in this medium is expensive. And keeping servers alive, keeping games alive like that, it's very, very costly. And to ask the government to do that, on one hand, I can appreciate it. On the other hand, yeah, Connor, you're right. Good luck. I hope it's one of those things that, like, man, I hope it works. I hope it finds all the success in the world and that this stops happening because we're losing so much art. I don't see how it's feasible or realistic that it would work. But that's me. Maybe I'm wrong.
We haven't said it this episode. We'll wait and see.
Connor, that is going to be it for for this week's episode of the Two-Penny Gamescast. Remember, you can find this show every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@TwoPennyGames, or mainstream podcast services of your choice. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe down below. Make sure you drop a comment down below on all of today's topics and what you agree or disagree with. Tell Connor how fucking stupid that Overwatch take was.
Still thinking about that, huh?
It's just bafflingly stupid. It's bafflingly stupid. The game, because a game got less popular over time and people stopped liking it, means that it wasn't worthy of praise when it first came out. What the fuck are you talking about? Until next time, have a great time. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Nice talking to you.